What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Save Point Podcast, episode 14. I am one of your hosts, Alex, and I'm joined, as always, by my good friend, Sway. We're here to answer a couple of fan or community questions, which we always, implore if you guys want to ask us for topics or questions, whatever it may be, leave it in the comments. You can message Sway on Twitter. We got the Discord server up. You can message us there as well. So lots of ways to get, into contact. But we want to start, as always, with what we've been playing, and then we got a couple questions that I'm sure we'll go down the rabbit hole with as well. So, Sway, what's been going on? What you been up to?
Halo, and more Halo.
Does that mean you're done with Hogwarts, or have you taken a sabbatical?
I've taken a sabbatical from it, but I am going to get back to it after I finish this battle pass, which I am on level 30 of it right now. So I foresee myself getting through with it like within a week or two.
Yeah.
I'm going to balance that between that and WWE that comes out soon, but Halo is what I've been playing, and I love it. It's got some issues, but I love it.
Yeah.
What about you, man?
Yakuza. I want to say it right, and I made the video on my third channel. It's Yakuza, and I wanna remain faithful to it, because when you watch videos, other people call it that. So I want to make sure I got to drill it in my head. So I played Yakuza Kiwami, the remake of the first game. I was planning on taking little breaks, and I still want to, but man, I am in. I'm just in on this franchise. So I did 0, then I've done 1. I beat it. I beat 1 over this past week. So I'm going to take a little bit of a break, but honestly, I'm going to jump in with Kiwami 2, the second game's remake. I'm going to do that probably within the next 3-4 days. I'm playing a game. I don't want to say it because it's a review kind of thing, but it's a very small game from a very small team, but they reached out to me. Super, super nice people. And I'll just give you a little, I won't say, the game's name. I don't think anybody's ever heard of it once in their life. The game's super good. So I'll have a review up for that very soon.
Can't wait for it.
Yeah. No, it's actually shocking how good the game is for it being, and it's not going to get eyes. I know that. It's not even like a game like Chia. Chia, I fully also know is going to get no eyes on. I think it's going to be a really good game. This game, I think, even less people, but it's a super good one. So, done that. I played Wolong Fallen Dynasty for about 25 minutes.
What did you think?
And then I died 4 times, and I think I'm going to go back. I think I'm trying to play older games for the third channel, so Yakuza's one of them, and then but I want to still play the newer games, and I'm using Wolong as the bridge in between Yakuza games. But I love the combat in the first 25 minutes. I mean, there's not too much you can say, right? I love the combat in Wolong, but I died 4 times. And whenever I die, Bloodborne, I died very early on. If I die early, it really, maybe I actually want to hear your opinion on it. If you play one of these Souls games, well, actually, you should just tell me your background in general, but I'll tell you mine. When I play these games, if I struggle immediately, it's a huge turnoff. Whereas Elden Ring, because of how it's crafted and you could just leave, go somewhere else, level up, and come back, it's not so bad. And I also didn't die early on in Elden Ring at all. Whereas Bloodborne, I died 10 times and I stopped. I stopped in the first hour of the first Demon Souls game. Bloodborne, Sekiro, maybe 3 hours in, I just kept dying. It's I love it. I love that game, but I'm horrible at it. So Wolong, I will go back, but I literally played it 25 minutes and I played something else because it's I died 4 times in 25 minutes, and that's just it's not the game's fault, it's my fault, but it's a turnoff because it's I just don't want to do it. So, going off of that, what's your thoughts on the Souls, those kind of difficult games?
So the only Souls games I've played is Dark Souls, Bloodborne, and about maybe 3 hours of Elden Ring.
Okay.
Right? And Elden Ring was one game where it's at some point I do want to put serious time into it. Because I did really enjoy it. It was the first Souls game that I was okay, I can be a little patient with this one.
Yeah.
I think Bloodborne was probably the Souls game I got the furthest in. Um, but I had that exact same frustration, and it wasn't the game. It was legitimately a mixture of the aesthetic, as far as like there's just a certain time of day that I want to play this game.
Yeah, yeah.
And then the other thing was just me getting good at the game. I have to be in like a patient mood when it's like something with like a large skill gap. I have to be
Yeah.
like in a real patient mood where I'm going to give myself enough time to just like let the game beat me down and then learn what I'm doing wrong and course correct from there. And so it's just one of those things where it did frustrate me, but I was also at that time like just not in the mood to just sit there and just play things, because at that time we were getting steadily releases and things like
Right.
that. And so like honestly this would have been the perfect time to do it,
Yeah.
but I wasn't thinking about it.
Well,
But
that's the thing. Yeah.
um
Like I think I came at it wrong because this is a good time for Wolong because it's just Resident Evil. So you got a lot of time, but because I'm trying to fill up the gap with like older games. So imagine going from Yakuza 0 and Kiwami, these over the top. The fights aren't that hard, especially if you die a couple times, you can switch it to easy mode and just obliterate people. Like it's a very fun game. It holds your hand to some degree. The game I'm reviewing is more of like a walk, not a walking sim, but along that it's a like an interactive storytelling thing. And then so you go
gotcha.
from that to Wolong, and it's such a but you're right, it's like how you feel like once you go from those games to Wolong and then back, they're just completely different games. And it's like
Completely.
I'm okay with dying like over and over. I do it quite often in these games, but you have to be in the right mindset, like you said, to let it break you down and then like truly understand how to play it. But again, that's kind of a strength of Elden Ring where, I mean, I did die early, but but you figure it out. I think you can figure out Elden Ring much quicker than most of these kind of games,
Yep.
which really helps. And it helped me. I mean, I can just, my own personal opinion, I know some people may like the other ones better. That really helped me with Elden Ring because you just,
I think I think Elden Ring is a game that I recommend if you haven't played a Souls game,
oh yeah,
you
that's
should
the
play
game.
first. Because I believe it teaches you how to correctly play it. Like I've seen so many people say they played Elden Ring and it made them go back to older Souls
Yeah.
games, and they had a much easier time playing those Souls games after playing Elden
Yeah.
Ring. And I think that Elden Ring just does a very good job of teaching you the fundamentals of how everything works.
Yeah, for sure. So that's it's a little dead, we gotta use Halo and the Yakuza games and stuff to fill our time, but we got Resident Evil 4 coming up, which next week most likely
Oh
we'll do a
yeah.
whole episode on it. And then once we get into April, once Dead Island 2, ironically enough, is like the floodgates opening, and who would have known that it would be Dead Island? But you know what? I don't know if you saw, I mean, those Dead Island 2 previews, by the way, that game looks
The 17
awesome.
minute one?
Huh?
That 17-minute one?
Yeah, yeah. There's
Yeah.
like the
Oh my
huge
god.
gameplay, reveal that they did. Actually, I think it was right after you and I recorded this last week. I was talking to you about it.
Yep.
Looked great. People are saying good things about it. The rumor as of today is next week. So even when you guys see this video on Saturday, this upcoming week, they're gonna have like a preview event where people, the game journalists will talk about it. So yeah, I'm pumped. And I think other things, Texas Chainsaw Massacre definitely seems like it's about to do a test, like a beta test. So
Yep.
I'm not like, I've messaged them and I filled out their little Google form saying like I'm a content creator, and but they've never once talked to me. So so hopefully I can get something, I can get into that. But yeah, hopefully things start to pick up. It is dead. Like this year's been really good when it has been like there, but it has also suffered from long stretches of nothing, just like last year. But I think it'll end soon. Um,
The lack of releases is just it's not
for
consistent enough.
Yeah, for now, like and we both talked about it. Once it gets to late April, really, right? Because late
Yep.
April, Dead Island and Star Wars, and then all of May is packed. All of June is packed. Starfield actually now the first week of September. So now September's done. It's good. Spider-Man could also come out in
Spider-Man in
September
September.
for all you
Yeah.
know.
It's like
Do you think they'd purposely? See, I don't think they would rush it, and I also have never believed Spider-Man 2 is coming out in September. Do you think it could happen though? Do you think Starfield and Spider-Man could be the same month? Because that'd
So
be nuts.
that would be nuts. And I feel like with Starfield coming out in September, my first mind, like my first thought jumped to, because the first 2018 came out in September.
Yeah.
So I was just like,
Early
okay,
too. I don't
like
remember
this is
I think it was like September
the
8th or
7th,
something. And
7th or 8th.
yeah, and this one's
Uh,
Starfield's the 6th.
and so I was thinking to myself, like, did Xbox like purpose, like, did they do that specifically to like say like this is our date now?
Yeah.
That was like my first jump, and then I was like, okay, but like maybe Spider-Man isn't like coming in September.
Yeah.
Not like they would know,
Right.
but I was just like sitting there thinking like that's very specific that you would choose that date,
Yeah,
like
that
around
early
that time,
September,
like,
right around like the Labor Day thing. Like it yeah. I mean, I'm so pumped. And the fall should be dominated with a lot of Sony should have its impact, Microsoft, Ubisoft, we should get the Avatar game a year after the movie comes out, like all this random stuff. So Sway had asked on Twitter and Discord for, questions. We got 2 of them we want to combat in this video kind of as the main topics. So Sway, you read it, we'll show it, as you're reading it, but go on.
okay. So from Nicholas on Twitter, we have, what is your favorite boss fight in a video game?
Oh my God.
What is your favorite boss in the video game, I should say?
Now, it's actually very hard, and I don't even know if I can think of any. I'd maybe go to the more like immediately I would think of the more like cinematic things in the Uncharted games, or even like David or something in The Last of Us. Like that's the first thing that I would kind of jump to. And it's only because when I think of because I got to go to my favorite games, right? You got to go to your favorite games, and so I think Uncharted. But I also think of a lot of like story. Like there is no boss in Life is Strange unless you count the hurricane that's coming as the boss, but you don't fight it, right? Do you have any off the top of your head?
I think if I'm going from a cinematic perspective, it would probably be like Virgil in Devil May Cry 5.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I also like the Urizen boss fight in Devil May Cry 5 at the beginning, but it wasn't necessarily long enough. And then Mr. Freeze from Arkham City is always one that has a very special place in my heart, and that probably would be number 1 for me, just because it was creative. It made you just figure out so many different ways to tackle the situation. You couldn't just spam the same thing over and over.
Yeah. I would nominate Killer Croc. Even like the first one, I think is really unique and really
just
like running away, the idea of running away. Yeah.
Yep. I love that one. It was just the feeling. I think that Arkham Asylum 2 was the creepiest of the game. So that boss fight like really added to the aesthetic, because like the first time I remember playing through it for the very first time when I was younger, and it was just like I died, actually, if I remember correctly. I died quite a few times because I didn't understand like what was going on.
Yeah.
And he was just running and running and running, and you're just like panicking, like, oh my God, don't look back.
Arkham has some of the best, like Scarecrow. I don't know if you count it as like a boss fight, but the sequences of Scarecrow in Arkham Asylum are, and it's kind of copied in other games like going forward after it. But Arkham's weird because it's got some of the best, and it's also got some of the worst, with like Joker at the end of Asylum. It's like, what were you doing? Even like the ending of Arkham Knight, I don't know if you want to call that a boss fight, but switching to when you're playing as Joker or not, like I think it's really smart. There's a lot of really, and you mentioned Mr. Freeze. That's one of the, I wanted to ask you, like, what makes a boss fight good? Because I think Mr. Freeze, like you said, like was created most likely as a boss fight, but it's so smart. It's so good. Whereas I think to the opposite of like Gotham Knights, those are just villains that just sponges, and you just beat them up, and they have like their 5 abilities. It's actually sad to think about. It's actually very sad to think about the Mr. Freeze in Arkham City and then the Mr. Freeze in Gotham Knights. Like I don't even want to do it.
It was day and night.
Yeah. What makes a boss fight good to you?
Creativity, challenging, and just like personality, I'd say. Like those 3 things would be the core crux for me. Like I'm not saying that it always has to be the most challenging thing in the world, but I do think that it should have some level of a challenge, and something that's going to make you think more than just how you've been playing the game the entire time. I think a boss fight should break the mold of
Yeah.
how you've been approaching the game the entire time with the regular enemies and force you to do something different, and just with its creativity make you really think about the tools that the game has given you and how to best utilize those tools in whether that be order or certain situation, figuring out the animations to the boss, like just figuring out everything. Like that's what I think makes a good boss fight to me, at least, just having to literally think, figure it out, and adding on what you've learned from the game and how can you use your resources wisely.
Yeah. That's what I was gonna say. I think using what you've done in the game and then kind of flipping it and giving you something. I think that, to me, because I think of like Elden Ring, talk about the Souls
Yep.
kind of things. You take everything you've learned, but then you give this boss that's just got this fresh move set. They're doing things that you've never experienced, right? Like, they have to be games where it's tough, because sometimes games will give you bosses and then those bosses will become like sub bosses later on in the game. I don't love that, because it's just, you're just reusing stuff. Or if it's a sub boss that eventually becomes a boss, a thing actually with that I just had played, the Yakuza Kiwami Majima, you fight him so many times and he's such a cool character, but you end up, it's just repeating, and it's a game mechanic where he wants to find you to fight you. And it's cool fighting him because, he can kind of stand toe to toe with you, but it's the same moves each time. He maybe has just a little extra health or whatever. He's in a different outfit, but you're still like, so once you kind of overkill it, it becomes a problem. I'd like to say this, now that I've thought about it a little bit more. I'd like to nominate the entirety of God of War 3. The entirety. Poseidon.
Yep.
I guess Zeus, anytime you fight him. Probably throughout the whole series, but specifically in 3. But like Poseidon, I think back, I think he would maybe be, because even though like Kronos is bigger, and that one is so good as well, but you think to the opening of 3, I mean, you saw a little bit of it in like the trailers kind of leading in, but I didn't watch too many trailers back then in 2010. So like playing it, and you get and the thing that I think is so interesting with Poseidon is you play the game for maybe like 15 minutes or 10 minutes. That's it. But the first 10 minutes is you're learning the tutorial and you're fighting enemies while on top of Gaia. And then immediately you're struck
They
with
throw you right into the water.
you're struck with a god. You have to fight a god. And he's massive, and it's so dynamic, and everything's moving, and it's got now the water helps. It's a biasness, right? Because he's got the water. But of course, like the cinematic, him looking at Kratos and Kratos gouging his eyes out and stuff, like, it's so iconic. But what makes it, like what we just said, it takes what you've learned in 10 minutes, not even just the whole game. You're only in the game for like 10 minutes. You learn everything. For me at the time, I had replayed the other games like right before it. But imagine if like God of War 3 is like your first God of War game. Like that's nuts, because you're thrown in, you learn the tutorial, and immediately you have to fight a boss fight that would probably be a boss fight at the end of the other 2 games. And you fight him in the first 15. And then in the first 2 hours, you fight Hades. So like it literally never stops. And Hades, I love Hades a lot, but his boss fight isn't as good as like Poseidon's. But yeah, so I'd like to, now thinking about it, there's some bosses in like Sly Cooper that I love. Like the villains in Sly Cooper are always so good. But I think God of War 3, just as an entity, deserves
Yes.
something,
I think that it's one of those games where I'd say, like, when you have a consistent string of boss fights,
Yeah.
it's hard to think off the top of your head like another game that gave you like good boss fight after good boss fight after good boss fight after good boss fight. It really didn't miss.
Yeah.
And so I I'm trying to think of it now in the entirety of like the time we were talking. I'm just sitting there thinking, like, has there been a game that had that much of a streak of boss fights?
I
than
think
God
the
of War
Soul,
3?
like for people that play Dark Souls and stuff, I think they probably would say those, because that's another that
Yep.
is a quality of those games. Is just they don't miss. There's so many good bosses in those games. Me having not played, then I can say like
Exactly,
Elden
that's
Ring, I
me
played
too.
like 50 plus hours. I fought a lot of bosses in Elden Ring, and there's some I don't know any of their names. I would, I guess, nominate Elden Ring as a game that's just got some very creative, and they're all different sizes, and I think they deserve something because the complexity of the bosses, right? Like, God of War, they are actually very, very different than each other, but they're not too complex on their own, which is fine. I mean, it's fine, and I think God of War 3 is one of the best games ever made. But Elden Ring, I would give them a nod, or any of those games, because they also don't miss. And while it's maybe not as dynamic as like a God of War, like it's not as over the top, those bosses are so deep, and they, so many move sets that you have to think on the fly, and they're all so different from each other. The only thing I guess that hurts it for me is like you die so many times that like eventually you're gonna figure it out and you'll but then you also are just dying over and over and over, and I don't know. There's a push pull with boss fights where I don't think now those games are the way they are for a reason, and people love them for that, but they should be challenging a boss fight, and they should be something different, but not something you die on like 100 times. But it depends on the game. Again, it depends on like the mood you're in. I don't go into Elden Ring bosses thinking I'm going to beat them in the first 15 attempts.
No, yeah, me neither. I don't go into any Souls game bosses thinking I'm like, all right, I'm going to die. It's just how many times I'm going to die. So I think, between those, and I think that's
maybe
Souls games, God of War, I'd say any of the top hack and slashers like Devil May Cry and Bayonetta are also good for them. Metroid has always has had some good boss fights in it as well.
Yeah, I was gonna say Jedi Fallen Order. I like some of the sister fights. I think those are pretty. And that game is along the lines of a Soulsborne like game. They also are very challenging, and I guess actually what those games do, right? Like you fight. Is it the third sister? Whoever the Trilla, we'll just say Trilla. You fight her, I think, like 3 times, at least 2 times, maybe 3. But her moves evolve. So by the final time, you may think you know her, and you know like half of her moves, but then they add in like an extra like 7-8 moves. That game was actually incredibly smart, I think, with the Fallen Jedi. That's kind of an iconic, I think, boss that in that game. Yep. That makes me very excited for Survivor, right? How many can they hit us with like 5 really good bosses in Survivor? I nominate that. I feel like we're missing, like we've got to be missing in the years of gaming. But it depends on the kind of games.
There's definitely games we're missing.
Yeah. But it depends on the like does Halo have any that jump out? Like there's like epic scenes with like lots of stuff going on, but I don't know if it's I don't know if it's ever been a 1v1 that's ever been so amazing.
So me and my friends are just like, we haven't been consistent with it, but we're actually going back and playing through all the stories of the Master Chief Collection.
Nice.
So I'd say like give it about like 2 to 3 months because of the schedules.
Yeah.
And I can revisit this and I can like have my memory refreshed, because I don't want to watch anything to go back and look, and I don't want to play ahead. So I'm just like, it's been a few years since I played them, but I'm like, I can go back in like 2 months and say like, okay, Halo did have this. Yeah. This was as challenging as I remember, but I don't want to say right now.
It's tough. You got to stretch the brain. Like I said, like, if I made a top 10 or top 20 list, so many of them would be like story game, like The Unfinished Swan or What Remains of Edith Finch or Journey. Like, those are some of my favorite games of all time. None of them have bosses, Sly Cooper, like, one of my favorite, I guess, groups of games of all time. They have a lot of boss fights. I wouldn't say they're like, I think the boss's personality, because they have a whole world and a whole arc of missions that you're doing, that's what makes them so good. But the final boss fight with any of them, none of them are like over the top nuts. And I would never say they're better than like God of War or something. I think God of War may be the best collection of it to me personally. And maybe Poseidon or something along those lines would be. But Zeus at the end is actually also super incredible. I think my favorite boss, if I had to choose a favorite boss of all time, it's got to probably come from God of War 3.
I think also Darth Vader has had a very good showing for boss fights. I mean, you had Jedi Fallen Order, and I'd even say Force Unleashed. I remember loving that boss fight. Yeah. So I think Vader's in there for like
anytime you go up against him, he's got to be mentioned at it. What else? Is anything else you want to say for it? Or do you want to move to the next one?
I think that's all I got for it right now.
Boss fights are tough.
And then now I have a question from I want to get his. I want to put his name out there so that way he gets credit for it here. And I have a question from Paul White, and it is: ever since games have introduced inverted controls, have you been able to go back to playing how it was before, or are you stuck playing inverted now?
Okay. So for me, well, I don't really play inverted almost at all. So I would say yes, I've been able to. The one somewhat meatier story I have, I'll tell, and then we'll give it to you, is Infamous. The first, I will never forget this. So I personally don't like inverted control. I think up is up and down is down, not the
Sounds
other way
down.
around. But Infamous defaults you on inverted. Okay, the first Infamous default, and I don't believe the second one does or Second Son, but the first one did, and I didn't know because this was like, well, it came out I think in '09. I don't think I played it in '09, probably 10 or 11, but I was not on. I mean, this is a decade ago. I wasn't really online. I didn't basically. What I'm saying, I didn't know you could change it. So you could change it. You can play Infamous normal, but it defaults you on inverted. So I struggled so hard. If I recorded myself, it would be pretty funny. But I will tell you this: by the end of that game, I was a master. I was a master at playing that game inverted. I was nailing it because you think about Infamous, it's a ranged. For the most part, it's a ranged game, right? It's you're blasting from a far range. So I got so good by the end of the game. I was nailing shots. I mean, obviously Cole is more powerful and stuff. And then I think when I went into the second game, because I feel like I played them back to back, so maybe I did wait for 2011 because that was the second one. So I played the second one almost right after, and I actually hated that it wasn't inverted, but I did play it normally. I played Festival of Blood, which is one of the best DLCs ever made. Played that on normal, and then Second Son. But I do remember that's my one story with inversion in games is that I normally hate them and I just don't play as it. But I was tricked into believing you could only play Infamous as it, and I actually got. So I feel like I can do it. Like if you gave me a game and say you must play this on inverted, I do it. I could do it. But probably not out of choice. I wouldn't. And I guess maybe that's the question. Would you prefer inverted? No. So that's my story.
I would say I would agree with that. Up is up and down is down. For me, except flying.
So Hogwarts.
Flying has yes, Hogwarts like was the first time I encountered it because I sucked with the broom. When you're doing the first broom challenge,
Yeah.
um, you're flying regularly. I think right. No, you're flying inverted controls, right?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
okay, yeah. So I started flying and I sucked. Little did I know, the broom upgrades over time will improve the flight. So you're supposed to struggle. But
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, this has gotta be me, right? So I'm like, and it was me. Uh but I'm like, okay, so let me try regular. And the first run through, I was like, okay, I did better than I did with inverted, but I didn't complete the challenge. So then I tried it again and I did significantly worse than I ever did. And this happens in every game that involves flight. Um,
But
I always have to be inverted.
I want to cut.
Always.
I want you to continue, but I want to cut you off because I want to ask you this because I've never been confident to talk about this with Hogwarts. I don't actually remember because I haven't played it in enough time, and I've never really studied my finger movements. Is it inverted or is it the right analog stick is only because I think it's just weird how it controls the right
It's
analog
only
stick.
the camera.
Yeah, isn't it up and down and the left analog stick is left and right, but one of them also kind of controls the camera as well. So you got two
Yep.
analogs. I don't remember if it actually is inverted. If you pull up, do you go down? I guess that's a question to you.
Hogwarts. It's
I don't
like the
I don't
last time.
remember.
It's been a week since I played it. It's been a week since I played it, but I do remember doing because I did up to the second broom challenge, and
Yeah.
so I think I'm on the third one now. And I fly everywhere on the broom, and I know for a fact that the right analog
Is
you can control the camera because sometimes I like to move the camera and just be cinematic with it and just watch me fly
yeah,
from the
yeah.
side. But I do remember there being something weird about the right analog also I want to say maybe even dictates if you go up or down.
I'm not joking of like not being able to remember this, even though I played and Christy played and I did her broom trials for her because I'm really good at it now. But I'm dead serious. I don't remember if it's actually.
It's weird. It's
but I
awkward.
do. But I guess my point, I hate. Like I can deal with flying inverted. I can't deal because I think of Infamous, right? So Infamous, going back to that story, it's inverted, and I guess what makes Infamous so difficult is your aiming. It's a shooter, so you have your hand out, and you're aiming at a target, and up is down, down is up, and left is right, and right is left. So you want to aim right, you actually have to, you have to go left on your, which is very, but I can do it. But with flying for Hogwarts, I know for a fact, whether it's inverted or not, they split up. I guess one point of the Infamous thing, it's still on one analog. Left moves Cole, right moves his hand. So it's all four inverted on the same analog stick, which sounds hard, and it is hard, but once you get it, I think you get it. For Hogwarts, I'm pretty sure left and right is one of them, up and down is the other. I don't
up
love...
and down is the left, right and left is the right. It's weird.
And I don't love splitting them, basically, for me.
No, me neither. It already feels awkward to begin with, but like, because once again, like your broom isn't fully upgraded, so you're already moving weirdly. But then like to have like, I'm trying to like move the left one right or left, and just to find out like, no, you have to use the other one. And I'm just like, okay, so I'm dealing with that. And on top of that, like the struggles of like my broom not being upgraded. And on top of that, like me not knowing if it's all the way me, is it like me getting used to how the flight works? I didn't know what was going on. So I changed to regular and just really figured out like, no, this is
and the
not
camera, I believe, gets stuck where if you do a weird turn, it doesn't follow you from your back, it stays. So you can actually kind of fly into the camera very like awkward, you know what I mean? And I actually I will say this, I'm not actually saying this is too much of like a complaint, like I don't really hold this against Hogwarts. I hated it in the beginning because if you make a weird turn, you will. I'm remembering it now. The PTSD is coming back. You'll be facing the camera instead of the camera following you, around. And at first, I hated it. I will say, once you get better and you're able to kind of do more spins quicker, it's actually a very cool thing where I don't want the camera, or I don't need the camera to have followed me. That's one interesting thing with Hogwarts where, it was a mechanic with the camera where it frustrated me in the beginning. But once you get good enough where you're not, because turning's hard, I think, and on purpose, like you had said. I think a lot of things of the broom are hard on purpose. Originally, it's frustrating, but once you get better at kind of pivoting 180, and you don't need the camera to follow you automatically, I think it's actually pretty cool. So that was one extra thing I throw in.
Yeah, I think one thing about the broom was, and I got to see once I get the broom fully upgraded. So I won't speak on this until afterwards. But as far as them adding a Quidditch mode, if I don't know how better that gets, I don't know how it feels. But a big part of Quidditch is flying. And so you're going to have the controls extremely precise. Turning, everything, stopping, up, down. It all has to feel fluid and precise, because you're juggling that on top of scoring, blocking. Then you're gonna have a seeker, so you're gonna have to try to go fast to catch the snitch. I see some fine tuning for the broom flying.
Oh yeah.
Before you can get Quidditch out there, and so that alone made me realize, like, okay, maybe we ain't getting Quidditch in DLC. I don't know.
Yeah, I mentioned that. I think I maybe said in a live stream or a video where, I like it. I will say, because I was live. I think I did say in a live stream. I was live the first time I got the broom. The one time I played Hogwarts Legacy like gameplay live is when I got the broom, and it was also with the New York Times thing, and I hated it. Like I was saying on the stream, so there's history to back this up. I was like, this is bad. I'm bad at it. I don't like it, And then, but by the end, I love it. I love broom flying in this game. And I'm good at it. Now, I think it's because I'm good at it that I'm not mad at it, right?
That's
But
good to hear.
I will say with Quidditch, I do not think the way they've designed to fly the broom, I don't think it works. I think you'd have to overhaul broom flying first to then make Quidditch work. So I think that probably would hold them up to make you'd have to do a whole new kind of system with the second game, which I think you can do, but I don't think you would do it with DLC.
No, yeah, because then they would have to they would either have to make Quidditch its own mode where the controls change completely, or they would have to fundamentally change how flying works in the entire game. In either way, that just sounds like something that you should probably do if you're making another game. Anyway.
Right. Yeah.
So I'm definitely got my eggs in the basket of Quidditch is coming in Hogwarts Legacy 2.
Me too. Me too. Well, anything else you want to say about Inversion or bosses or anything in general? I think it was a good solid episode, but if we want to say more.
No, I think that the questions that we got this week were excellent. They gave us plenty of conversation.
Yeah.
Definitely keep asking more because I appreciated it. And the inverted question and the boss fight question really just were questions that really I think for Alex as well, like got me thinking. Like I had to really put into some thought, like, have I been able to go back? And it's like for any other gameplay I can totally do regular, but for flying and anything, I can't go back.
Yeah.
So that was like something unique for me where I was like, that is a really good question. And same boss fights. It made us think.
Yeah.
So
I may use the boss fight thing on my third channel. The whole point's to look back at past games, so maybe like a top boss fight video. Maybe I could make that like a deep dive. Yeah, I like it. I like it. Well, anything you want to say to the fine folks at home to end it?
Thank you for supporting the show. We always appreciate you. Tune in every week. Tune in to what this guy has going on all channels. Yeah. All channels. Stay tuned to me on Twitter. I know I'm slow pumping out them threads, but I got a nice little surprise for y'all. All right, I'm working on a lot of different things this month, but you're getting more than one thread. It's going to be a few of them coming out. Nice. So thank you all, as always, for supporting, and send it to Alex.
Yeah, and we'll be on top of the once a week thing, we'll be doing something. Maybe we'll announce it either next week's episode or the following week. We'll announce maybe the live stream thing. Because I haven't said anything, so maybe we'll do that in the next couple of weeks. We'll kind of announce it and get that going. So we got other things planned, but no, we really appreciate it. Honestly, it seems like we definitely have like a core group that watches every single week, which makes me really happy. And
me too.
Yeah, it's kind of what I wanted the first 2 times I tried this show and it failed. But no, I really do appreciate all the support you guys give. We have a blast, doing it. And next week's episode 15, which is nuts that it's that long. That's a lot of episodes. That's a lot of hours of entertainment. Thank you all so much for watching. We will see you all next week for the Resident Evil episode.